Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Loyani, and in the previous video we render a list of products with signals and the control flow at 4. Right now each card still shows placeholder content. In this video we'll connect to real data from the parent component, which is the ProductsGrid, to the child component ProductCard using Angular's modern input signal API. By the end of this lesson, each card will display the correct product information and you'll understand the difference between required and optional inputs. Before we start coding, let's align on the pattern. The parent, which is the ProductsGrid, owns the list of data. So we have the product signal in the ProductsGrid. The parent, ProductsGrid, loops through the products, and the parent also passes one product to each child card. Remember, right now it's all placeholder data, so we're not receiving any data yet. The child, which is the product card, receives the data through input and it's going to render it, because in the product card is where we have the title, the category, the description, the price, and so on and so forth. So this is a classic parent-to-child communication by using modern singular-based inputs. This is the first form of communication between Angular components that we will learn throughout this course. Let's start with the product card. If we open the product card component, right now the product card is empty because we have no data. Remember, everything is a placeholder for now. So we're going to add a local variable so we can use in our template to make a reference, and instead of having the placeholder, we have the real data. So I'm going to add a read-only and a variable called product. Now I need to receive this variable. So in Angular, the way that we do this, we're going to use the input. In the input, we're going to again use the diamond operator to specify what's the type of variable that I'm looking for, which is a product, which is the model that we have created in the last video. And this input is a signal. So we're just going to initialize the signal empty here. And I'm also going to import from Angular core. I have npm run start or ngserve running on the background, and everything is still working because we're not passing any data to each of these cards. I'm going to make one change here, and I'm going to make this input required because it doesn't make sense to have a product card with placeholder component, and it doesn't make sense passing an empty object to this component. So I'm going to make this required. So after the input, I'm going to add the required. This means that the input.required is marking this input as mandatory. Again, the product is giving us a strict typing, and because this input is signal based, we're going to read it with open and closing parentheses. If the parent forgets to pass this input, Angular will warn us as the build and runtime, which is exactly what we want for critical data. And if you're working with legacy or the classic Angular version with a non-signal based API, this is what you'll have. So instead of the input, you'll have a decorator or an annotation if you're a Java developer like myself. So you'll have a decorator passing the argument as required true, and then the name of the variable, and just give a different name so it stops the compilation error. And then the typing as the product. And in line 14, we have the new modern version. Note that the input decorator, we have a capital I, as the signals based one is lowercase I. Both comes from the same package. So I'm just going to remove this and also remove the import. Both syntaxes work in Angular today, but the signal base is the current recommended approach for all the new code, and that's what we're going to use throughout this course. Let's see this in action by running the ngserve or the npm run start command again. So I have stopped, and we're going to run the npm run start again so we can see the warnings. And as expected, we have a required input from component that must be specified, and because in the product grid we're not passing anything, we get this compilation error, which is exactly what we want. Let's fix this. So now in the product card, we have a variable named product. We're going to come back to the product card and replace all the placeholder data with the real data. So here we're going to use interpolation. So two curly brackets. we're going to access the product because this is signal. Again, open close parentheses because we're accessing the getter function. And then we can access any property of the product. So first we're going to add name. I'm going to leave this category for now. And for the content, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to remove the placeholder, add interpolation, and here we're going to access the product signal and we're going to add the description. And we're also going to add the price. So we don't have this here yet, so we're going to add another paragraph. We're going to style this with price and interpolation, and we're going to add the price. So product price. Now we're going to connect the parent template to the child input because we're still getting the compilation error. So we're going to come back to the ProductsGrid, and this is where we have the compilation error. We're going to use a property binding. So this is what it means. By adding an input product, this means that now we are expecting a property called product, like this. And inside the quotes, we're going to add our local variable here, which is also named product. In case you decide to name this something else, like product underscore, what we would have will be product underscore and then the name of this variable here, which is product. But because we have named exactly the same thing, that's why we do product. And in Angular, the way that we do property binding is with square brackets. So this way, in case this product changes, Angular knows how to listen and provide the updates to the child component as well. Now, each ProductCard instance gets one product object from the list. If we go back to the browser, we have data now being displayed instead of the placeholder data. Now, we can also have optional inputs with default values. Required inputs are perfect for must-have data like this example. But sometimes we want configurable behavior that can fall back to a default. Let's add an optional input to control the button label in the card. So we're going to go back to the product card. We're going to add another input here. Again, this is going to be read only because once we pass the value, we're not changing the instance of this object. So I'm going to name this add button label. And again, this is going to be an input. The input is going to be a signal. And we're going to initialize this input with a default value, which is going to be add to cart. Because we have not added the required, this input is optional and the default value is add to cart. So the parent can override when it's needed. So let's also go back to the product cart and we're going to add, instead of the placeholder, the name of the add button label like this. If we go back to the browser, everything is still working with the add to cart, but in case we would like to override the value, what we can do is pass the add button label, for example, view details. Now, if we go back to the browser, we have view details. This makes the component more reusable without the extra complexity, and I'll keep the add to cart for now. So there are a few common mistakes here that we would like to avoid. Marking important data as optional when it should be required can be one of the mistakes, so be very careful when you are designing your own components. A good rule of thumb is if the component cannot work without it, use the input required, such as the product example. If it is a configuration, use the input with the default value. What I'm also going to do here before we end this, I will remove this list so we have exactly just the products, and we can even remove the total products here because we don't need this anymore. So in this video, we have learned how to move real data into reusable child components. We have created an input with input required. We have passed data from the parent using the property binding. We have also read input signals, and we have also used optional inputs with default values. This is one of the most important patterns in Angular UI composition. In the next video, we will build on this by adding conditional UI in the card using the if and else control flows to display sale prices and badges. If you are enjoying the video so far, or if you have any feedback, please drop a comment. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.